And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
Right, attention to roll call, people. Just a quick update before we get going. Eric Dim's going to take a little time off, obviously, as everybody's expected. When he comes back, we'll let you know. Until then, we're going to keep rocking out. Schedule is going to stay the same. Up in New York City now, I'm going to be bouncing. And I'll be headed up in about a month. I'll be headed back this way in about a month. So for those I missed, I apologize. You know, had a lot going on, obviously. So, yeah. Marlon, what do you got, brother? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Morning, everyone. Belated Happy Mother's Day to all the ladies here, and hope everyone had a great weekend as well. And yeah, that's about it. I'm ready to go.
All right, nice. Yeah. So obviously, you know, the papers, New York Post, along with the New York Times, had filed a lawsuit to have the Eric Adams documents of his indictment unsealed so that people could get a look at that unsealment. You know, this was a quote that I found pretty interesting in all of this. And this comes by way of the New York Post. So we come to find out that Eric Adams had a total of 7 cell phones as the New York City mayor. I mean, right off the bat, I'm like, I don't even know how organized you are or lack of organization, but why would anybody have 7 cell phones? So this comes on the heels of the indictment where he was bribed by Turkish officials, where he was charged with accepting donations from foreign nationals, obviously completely illegal. We don't want foreign governments being taking over our elections or controlling our politicians. As well as, I think the worst thing is he defrauded taxpayers out of $10 million. And we'll go a little bit into those charges. But before we do, I think this is the main point before we get started, you know, because the MAGA world and everybody else wants to say that Eric Adams said something about Joe Biden and he got indicted. It's just factually not accurate. It's not. That is not the timeline of the way things happened. He's been being investigated since Trump's last administration for being bribed by Turkish officials and by defrauding the government, actually the taxpayers of New York City, out of matching funds by way of straw donors, by way of taking illegal donations and running this elaborate straw donor scheme. So this is the one quote I want to hone in on. The 1,785 pages in the court filings expose the painstaking steps the FBI and federal prosecutors went through to piece together the investigation that his owner and the Trump White House has derided as a political hit job. Right? So that's what the papers put out. That's what the Benny Johnsons, the DC Dranos, and everyone else put out. You know, that was the messaging. Oh, it wasn't a political attack. And I got to say, a lot of you guys got gaslit and fell for it. I still, till today, hear people tell me that it was a political hit job. I no longer argue with anybody because I don't care, because the bottom line is he wasn't charged. But this is the main point in all of this. Trump's DOJ noted it made the decision to toss the case without considering a piece of single evidence. And why did they do that? Because when you hear the evidence, you're going to say, oh, my God, why did we drop the charges against Eric Adams? You know, so before we even go any further into this, like, what was it a political hit job in your opinion on Eric Adams, or did Eric Adams get caught with his hand in the cookie jar?
Yeah. If it's a political hit job, I mean, how could it be? Because it existed. You know, Eric Adams' cloud of scandals existed prior to Eric Adams becoming mayor of New York City. You know, it's this whole narrative that it's a political hit job is just false, because there are also plenty of Democrats involved in looking at Eric Adams from the get-go. Again, so I stayed up a couple hours last night just digging through this, and one of the questions I had was that why would Eric Adams move like that? You know, and to fully understand it, you need to go back to the 2010s and to go back to the Marlon Commission and go back to the AEG scandal, which involved the aqueduct. And it's something I'm going to be mentioning here a couple times, just to prove the point that it's not a hit job, and that Eric Adams he's kind of the one that got away from that entire scandal, and a lot of the ways he moved was because of what happened prior. So
yeah, so I why his case was dropped, that's a whole nother show. We'll get into that at another time. We're going to be talking about the curious case of Mayor Eric Adams and his 7 cell phones. So we're going to talk about all the evidence that got released. We're going to be deep diving into this further. There's a lot of stuff, man. I was going through a lot of this last night. I spent about 3 hours last night going through all the stuff. There's a lot to go through. There'll be revelations that'll be had, whether it'll be by this podcast, whether it'll be by reporters. This will stay in the news, and it should. It should. We should see how our government moves and why they do things. Are our elected officials held separately accountable than the people of New York City? It looks like that way. So just here's a note from the indictment, just to show the evidence. I'm not going to go through all the bribes, because people today don't seem to care about the bribery. They don't seem to care that Turkish officials bribed him with hundreds of thousands of dollars in expensive travel, $35,000 plane tickets, luxury hotel rooms. For some reason today, it's perfectly acceptable. It's like, nah, it's no big deal. It would be a big deal if a member of the NYPD did it. But when a mayor does it, when a politician does it, it's not a big deal, right? So I don't understand that point, so I'm not going to get into that. He was clearly bribed. Nobody cares. Okay. Demoralized society. I get it. Here's the part I don't understand why people aren't infuriated about. So in New York City, we have a program called matching funds. So if you're a New York City resident, or you claim to be a New York City resident, and you pay, let's say you give a candidate $25. That $25 could be 7 to 1, 8 to 1, whatever the matching funds will be. And where does that match come from? Where does that 8 times the amount you donated come from? It comes through the tax base. It comes through taxpayers. So that's done to basically say to even out elections. But it could also be manipulated. And how that could be manipulated is through, you have people that traditionally wouldn't have donated, and you pay them money to make donations to the campaign so that Eric Adams could get his matching funds. And that's what it appears this whole elaborate scheme happens. So if you haven't read the indictment, I suggest you do. But here's one quote out of the indictment. This is line 3. Eric Adams, the defendant, compounded his gains from the straw donor contributions. So one, it's illegal to have straw donors, right? So he breaks the law numerous times by having his organization act and take in these illegal donations, right? So he compounds his gains from the straw donor by using them to defraud New York City and steal public funds. New York City has a matching fund program that matches small donor contributions from individual city residents with up to 8 times their amount in the public funds to give New Yorkers a greater voice in elections. Adams' campaign applied for the matching funds based on known straw donations, fraudulently obtaining as much as $2,000 in public funds for each illegal contribution. Adams and those working directly falsely certified compliance with applicable campaign finance regulations despite Adams' repeated acceptance of straw donations, relying on the concealed nature of these illegal contributions to falsely portray his campaigns as law-abiding. As a result of these false certifications, Adams' 2021 mayoral campaign received more than $10 million in public funds. High-level corruption. If any of you guys did this and you weren't the mayor in New York City, you decided to run for mayor or something else, and you weren't in the seat of power, you'd be going to jail for a long time.
Yeah. It's amazing how Adams glossed over that when he downplays all these allegations. In fact, I don't even think he mentioned it. He downplays the luxury travel that he gets as just upgrades and seats that he, as though he paid any part of it. But this is it's really shameful. And for those of you thinking that that he had no involvement in this, there's one of the allegations are that he well, we'll probably touch on it, but his staff has told him that a lot of the donations that were being given by these donors was illegal. And in one instance, he after being told of it, his response to the staffer was for them to continue pursuing the illegal scheme. So this is somebody who is not just corrupt, but is as we've talked about in the past, is a sociopath, because he's able to easily lie about it in public and gloss over all the obvious allegations of corruption that have surrounded him. And it's just as we go through it, you'll see just how crazy the amounts get, and just how repeated they are.
So, and I think we have to take in that two other people were indicted and pleaded guilty, right? Dwayne Montgomery, right? Was it Dwayne Montgomery, the former NYPD inspector, and
Mohammed Bai,
right?
Yeah.
They both.
Yeah.
So, to make the claim that Eric Adams hasn't known what was going on, I think is just giving someone too much of the benefit of the doubt. I mean, if I don't know how much we're going to get into these in all of the conversations that were had and all of the stuff that happened that they had. Eric Adams basically was unwilling to discuss whatever plans they had to bring in more donations over a phone. It had to be done by way of signal, where all of these messages got erased. He consistently tells everybody to hit him up on the other line, and they have conversations back and forth over 7 different cell phones. One of those cell phones, however, after they took Ed Caban's phone and went through his phone, they found out that Eric Adams had another number that they weren't aware of, because in the contacts, it was Eric Adams. And that phone was an NYPD issued phone. Why did he have an NYPD issued phone? To conceal, right? Nobody's going to really be able to get in that. It's highly encrypted, right? For personal protection reasons. So, and no one knew about that phone. He wasn't forthcoming with that phone. They found out about that phone upon taking former NYPD Police Commissioner Ed Caban's phone. Mal, what do you think about him having an NYPD issued phone as the mayor of New York City? Do you think this is something that's common, or is this just only in the Adams administration?
I think it's one of those gray areas, but there's a fundamental problem behind it. Why he has it, right? So I had this discussion with Sal yesterday. We were going back and forth about it, and I said that basically this administration are like experts at navigating gray areas in the law and doing things that, even though the law may not explicitly say you can't, it's just inappropriate and it's kind of seems out of the ordinary, And I've never heard of a mayor of Bloomberg walking around with an NYPD smartphone. But the thing is, why would Bloomberg walk around with an NYPD phone? Because Bloomberg delegated the police department to the police commissioner. He would have no real need to be in the to be in so much in the know of what's going on in the minutia of NYPD. And I think that point is a point that they're going to use to kind of get to kind of finagle any conversation about this in court. They're going to say, hey, he's the mayor, he needs to get access to all this information, right? But if you think about it, if the mayor had really delegated a police commissioner to be a police commissioner and to be in charge of it, then why would he need a phone? Why would you need to know? The PC's got it, right? That's their job, right? But in this administration, Eric Adams is the true police commissioner, because all his PCs only have a certain amount of leg room to work with until he undermines them with his with his right hand man. Either it's Kaz or it's Phil Banks or it's Chell, But what we're seeing is because the PC isn't really the PC is more of a kind of a figurehead nowadays, as opposed to being an autonomous commissioner of a department of the city, like in past administration. So now Eric Adams uses this gray area to get himself his own cell phone and to kind of hide his shady fundraising, and meanwhile using the fact that he needs to know what's going on in the police department to get a department cell phone for himself. It's just unprecedented, But there's been so much of that already in this department. Should this really surprise any of us?
I mean, I always had 2 cell phones. I still have 2 cell phones. For those of you that are listening on my main phone, I still have 2 cell phones. But I hate having 2 cell phones. I think it's inefficient. It's just sometimes you want to separate business from actual life, right? Like you don't want to be taking calls for solely related to your business outside of your life. And, you want to be able to detach from that, right? You don't want to see it in your face. You don't want to see what messages you're getting. Sometimes you're on vacation. So I understand having 2 phones. Eric Adams had 7. So to interact with the NYPD as the mayor in New York City, I could see you having Eric Adams' cell phone and the mayor's phone to conduct city business. I can't. Does he have a cell phone for sanitation? Does he have a separate cell phone for FDNY? Does he have a separate cell phone for every other agency, all the hundreds of other? No, obviously not. He doesn't, right? So, I mean, you see a clear pattern of deception, not only with Eric Adams, but everyone surrounded by Eric Adams. Chris Arnold brings up a point that I don't know if you guys remember. And what he says is and he's talking about NYPD, he's talking about One Police Plaza, actually wanted to install technology that detected cell phones after you were asked to hand it over before entering meetings. If that's not a red flag. So they wanted you to come into meetings, hand your cell phone over so that you couldn't record. Nobody could ever hear what was ever said in those meetings. It can never be brought up in a court of law again. This is from top officials in the NYPD. I mean, right then and there, they should be removed out of office. Just right then and there. We've heard time and time again how TARU, which is the NYPD's Technical Assistance Response Unit, was used to sweep executive offices, high-level mayor-appointed NYPD officials' office for bugs. Like it's the Raven Night. Like One Police Plaza is the Raven Night Club where John Gotti, Sammy the Bull, and everybody else were hanging out. Why would you care if anybody's listening? If you weren't saying it, why would you go to such great lengths? And rumors for months were there were high-level NYPD executives and some low-level members of the NYPD also involved in soliciting straw donors, part of these straw donor schemes. And I think if if there was ever a deep dive into that case, it's closed now, right? The Trump administration said it's political without ever looking at any of the evidence, right? We're just going to say it's political, but we're not going to look at the evidence so that we could always just say, hey, we didn't look at the evidence. so it's gone. But the level of deception can't be understated. So we remember that his Brianna Suggs home was raided, right? Remember that. So this is also part of some of the documents that were released. So it doesn't say the name. It just says the Adams staffer agreed to speak with the FBI agents and falsely denied the criminal conduct of herself and Adams, among others. At one point during her voluntary interview, the Adams staffer excused herself to the bathroom and while there, deleted the encrypted messaging application she had used to communicate with Adams. The promoter, the Turkish official, the airline manager, and others. So that to me is tampering with evidence charge right on the staffer. Why would she be so concerned if nothing was done that was wrong? I mean, obviously it's fine now because, these are just allegations. These are just allegations from the FBI at this point because they haven't went nowhere. I mean, but when you look at the web of deceit and the web of lies, I mean, anyone sitting here saying that this was a political hit job, I'm just saying you definitely, if you're not a cop, you definitely did the right thing. If you're not a detective, if you're not in any investigative form, you did the right thing. If you're in an investigative body, or even if you just have an analytical mind, or you could perceive things properly in life, you see a web of criminality here. I mean, to me, right then and there, that is a tampering with evidence charge. Obviously, that's going to go, it's gone, right? The case is gone. But what do you think about going into the bathroom during her voluntary interview and deleting the app? So nervous, she had to delete the app.
I think that's like that's stuff you see in movies, I think it's crazy. I mean, but like I said, I think when like I said, I spent a lot of time looking at this last night, and one of the reasons why I dived into it was to try and find out like why he moved like that. And the way he moved seemed like somebody who's like who's been through this, who knows what's going on. And to me, it seems like a lot of the allegations they seem like a repeat of the allegations that were against the senior senators that were around Adams when he was in the state senate and the aqueduct scandal was going on. And the a lot of the allegations are the same. They include like travel act bribery, wire fraud, mail fraud, just a whole bunch of allegations. And one of those allegations was also of campaign fraud, and that just like this, that there was an influence. It was using campaign donations for influence peddling, and that Adams himself was receiving money from AEG, one of the groups that were trying to get the aqueduct casino at the aqueduct. So when I hear this, it's like they kind of knew they kind of knew the game, and were trying to get away. And it looks like Adams in a lot of ways was kind of escaped justice back in the 2010s, because you look at all the names that were related to that case, like Sheldon Silver, John Sampson, Malcolm Smith, even Jeff Klein, who didn't go to jail or anything, but he had a ethics investigation on him as well. But those other names I mentioned went to jail, and they went to jail for wire fraud, corruption, extortion, travel act bribery. And travel act bribery is something I'll come back to. But again, the point I'm trying to make here is that Adams has been through this, and his people and himself moved like they knew how to play the game and knew how to the fact that they were using Signal again is another sign that they kind of knew the game and knew how to worm their way out of a situation, like she clearly was trying to do here.
Yeah. So moral of the story is I'm going to be downloading Signal for our anonymous tips. We're going to give you a number for our anonymous tip line through the Signal app. So you could erase it. We'll erase it. We'll keep it on a 24-hour cycle. So I think this is another point. I think this was another point that really stood out to me. And I think you're 100% right, Marlon. I think Andrew Yang nailed them at the debate when they were running head to head against Mayor. And I think what he said Eric Adams has the unusual trifecta of being investigated by federal, local, and state authorities. And he said, why would we expect any different as a New York City mayor? And he turned out to be 100% right. That's exactly what's going on throughout his entire administration.
Yeah. And you know what? Just to hit on that point about this not being political, again, after all these scandals happened in the mid-teens, in the early teens, around 2010, by 2013, the Marlon Commission had started. And the Marlon Commission was because there was just so many scandals tied to the state Senate, right? And Pret Bharara, who was a Democrat, right, and has a very illustrious career of taking down corruption and like the mafia. He was looking into that, and he even looked into the Cuomo's attempts to kind of stonewall the commission, So the point I'm trying to make here is that this isn't political. Adams was a almost a protege of John Sampson, and John Sampson went to jail for 5 years. And John Sampson, during that case, John Sampson diverted. He gave Eric Adams. Eric Adams was basically the point man of it, and John Sampson went to jail for all these similar allegations that Eric Adams is now facing. So he kind of knew the game.
Yeah, and here's another point. Here's another point that just shows how deep the deception was, right? On November 6th, 2023, FBI agents executed a search warrant for electronic devices used by Eric Adams. Although Adams was carrying several electronic devices, including 2 cell phones, he was not carrying his personal cell phone, which is the device he used to communicate about conduct described in his indictment. When Adams produced his personal cell phone the next day in response to a subpoena, it was locked, such that a device requires a password to open. Adams claimed that after he learned about the investigation into his conduct, he changed the password on November 5th, 2024, which is the day before they come and get his phone. So he learns about it. He decides to leave the phone home and changes the password. And he increased the complexity of his password from 4 digits to 6. Adams had done this, he claimed, to prevent members from his staff of inadvertently or intentionally deleting the contents of his phone. Because according to Adams, he wished to preserve the contents of his phone due to the investigation. But Adams further claimed he had forgotten the password he had just set, and thus was unable to provide the FBI with the password that would unlock the phone. So day before, so sounds like me, he's fully aware they're coming for his stuff. He changes his password from 4 to 6 digits in an effort to help them. He just wants to preserve everything, right? Because he's innocent, right? I didn't do anything. I want to preserve all this for you guys. And I changed it to make sure that none of my staff went in there and deleted anything, because I want you to conduct a proper investigation. But I forgot what it was. Totally forgot. Yeah, this is all totally normal, right? Totally normal.
How thoughtful of him,
And how well thought out that defense is, right?
Yeah.
Is that not a great defense? I mean,
Yeah.
no, I wanted to help. I wasn't deleting anything. I wanted to help you guys. I was trying to preserve it, but I forgot it.
Yeah. All that crack and weed in the back of the car, I wasn't transporting it. I was bringing it to you guys to help you out in this investigation.
Yeah, no, I was just I got the gun, but I was just driving to the precinct with it to drop it off.
Yeah.
And then here you guys are. I was just bringing it to the precinct.
Yeah. But even worse, John, this is like him saying, I was driving the gun to the precinct and oh, look at that. The car just happened to drive off into the water, The trunk just happened to pop open and the gun flew into the water on the way there.
Yeah, so I mean, clear utter deception on the part of New York City mayor. I mean, I think the city did a great job, and I think this is the second article they released on this. It was titled "Eric Adams Search Warrant Records Show a Scramble to Invade FBI Scrutiny." Dozens of documents ordered released by the judge in the mayor's dismissed federal corruption case show evidence investigators chased involving allegedly fraudulent campaign fundraising. So go through a little bit of this. A trove of documents from Mayor Eric Adams' now defunct criminal case released late Friday reveals extraordinary steps the mayor and his aides took to keep their communications secret, prompting the FBI to seek approval to unlock his many electronic devices by pressing the mayor's fingers to devices or holding his head in front of them if needed to gain access. In seeking warrants to search the devices, the mayor and his aides, the FBI told judges they needed to gain immediate access to his phone and other electronics upon seizure to prevent data from being deleted remotely. Manhattan federal judge Dale Ho ordered federal prosecutors to release the search warrants at the request of the New York Times in the aftermath of the extraordinary dismissal of corruption charges at the behest of the Trump administration. FBI filings detailing evidence of suspected campaign finance fraud by Adams, campaign fundraisers, and other associates spell out step by step how prosecutors and investigators proceeded a probe initiated by Manhattan U.S. Attorney in August of 21, before Adams had won the election. What do you think about that so far? Before he won the election, this investigation has started into his campaign. Is that targeted by the Biden administration, or is that just due diligence trying to weed out public corruption?
Yeah. Like I said, there had been a cloud of suspicion around Eric Adams for a long time. And that cloud of suspicion and allegations followed him from the state Senate to the Brooklyn borough president's office, and as we can see, definitely into the mayor's office. And again, this investigation was conducted by Democrats, in the Southern District, and there's nothing political about it. It's just he was a corrupt politician, and they wanted to remove him from the seats of power that he occupied. So I just can't understand why anyone at this point would think that any of this was political, because again, like I said, Eric Adams always surrounded himself with he always had a tight circle, right? The people that were in his administration, like Phil Banks, he knew for decades since he was in the police academy. And I've come to realize why he did that. Because going back to the 2010s, he saw what happened there, and he never stopped being who he was. And the only way to continue doing that was to maintain a tight circle. And I think, like, the crumbs part of it, I think was him like trying to make sure that his friends are rewarded in that process. But I think Eric Adams maintained a tight circle because he saw that, like again, John Sampson and all these other politicians were went to jail, and he wanted to avoid that. I mean, in the allegations here, as early as 2015, right? 2015. We're talking like just a couple of years after the Moreland Commission, just actually 2 years after the Moreland Commission, and a couple of years after the aqueduct scandal began. Eric Adams is already taking trips to Turkey, right? That are paid for by all these foreign interests and all these people looking for benefits, for reward. And it's just obscene that like he went back to it so quickly, and he's been doing it ever since that point. So this is nothing political about this, people. You just got to dig into it, and you read it, and you see for yourself that this guy's dirty, and he's been involved in numerous there's been numerous allegations about him doing this for over a decade now.
So, I mean, so there you go. Prior to him even being elected mayor, this investigation starts. But hey, listen, Trump told you that it was political, so it must be. Don't listen to anybody else. Trump's DOJ told you it's political, even though they didn't check any of the evidence. Okay, so don't. So it's totally political. Don't listen to anything. Don't believe anything you're hearing here. You know, we're just a bunch of flunky cops. You know, we flunked out of the NYPD. You know, so. So, well, I was gonna say sorry.
If I may, Hood Mayor says, I disagree, Marlon. Adam's circle was too loose and large. Well, Adam's circle was the problem with Adam's circle is they weren't professional at this. We've said before that these guys were like street kids who all of a sudden get into like the seats of power, and they didn't move like he did because he had that whole decade of experience moving like that, and there were bigger people, bigger fish that were doing it, seemingly doing it for a longer time that he was around in the state senate. But his circle was tight in that they were all friends that he knew for decades in the police department. And if you're going to be corrupt, you know that's how you're going to be corrupt. You're going to be corrupt with people that you can trust your secrets to, and people who aren't going to run, people whose moral compass is as misguided as yours is, and he knows that because he's been buddies with him for more than a decade. And if you remember when Eric Sanders came on, he talked about how these people were kind of unscrupulous in the police department themselves. Okay, as far back as when they were like young rookies on the job. So Eric Adams knows that they were all they had weak morals like he did.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, and everyone talks about that too. Like why is Kaz so special? Like, what did he do to rise those ranks? I'm like, he's a complete loyalist. What do you mean? He's the kid in the park that you grew up, and while you guys were doing whatever you were doing, he was running to get you Gatorades. He always wanted to be down with you, and you have full faith that he's going to be completely loyal to you in the face of any investigation and anything else, and he's going to do whatever you tell him to do. Not because he's competent at his job, not because he's going to provide the best amount of public safety, but he's trustworthy to you in whatever schemes you're looking to pull. So I agree with you. And if you see, I mean, now we don't know based upon that was Brianna Suggs that they were talking about, but it seems like it was. I mean, I'm reading it. That's what I'm picturing. I don't know that to be true. But when we talked about the girl, the FBI did a voluntary interview of an Adams staffer, and she went in the bathroom and deleted that app, and she's back to fundraising again for the campaign now that this case is dropped. So, and there are ties there to Eric Adams and all of his friends with everyone around him. So I understand what both of you are saying, but I agree with you. It's everyone is well known, right? Like it's just like back in the day with you grew up in Bensonhurst around the mob. you're not getting that union job, or you're not going to be trustworthy to sit in that cafe or anything else unless they know you since you were a kid. They know where you come from and all the other stuff. So it's New York City is being run like a criminal enterprise, because guess what? It is. I mean, and that's just it's there. But I think what is brilliant about the Adams administration, though, is their ability to fight perception and their ability to paint a different truth. I think they do that better than anyone I've ever seen. Like Bill de Blasio was hated because he didn't try to fight the truth. He just said what he was going to say. He didn't care. Like his reality, he told you. What Adams does is he tries to blur your reality to make it his. And I think they've been socially like accepted because of their ability to blur the lines. So these documents come out. All the papers are basically deep diving into this. I think none better than the city. I think they do the best investigative reporting out of all of the other papers currently. And they kind of go down the line. They don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They're gonna kind of go in. So and when after reading those and after reading the indictment, you're like, wow, how the hell did this guy get off? Right? Wow, there must have been something really going on here. They were worried about something. But this is what the Adams administration tells you. A spokesperson for the mayor's campaign, Todd Shapiro, defended the mayor's conduct. He said, today's unsealing of the document affirms what we have long known. Mayor Adams did nothing wrong. These documents also show that federal authorities made false, reckless accusations with absolutely no evidence in a relentless, shameless assault on the mayor, said Shapiro. The truth is now well known. The mayor is innocent of any wrongdoing, and a handful of campaign volunteers attempted to take advantage of his trust. So Dwayne Montgomery and Mohammed Bahi took advantage of Eric Adams. He had no idea what was going on, and the evidence shows that he did absolutely nothing wrong, and the federal authorities made false and reckless accusations, and there was no evidence to shamelessly and relentlessly assault the mayor. I mean, this is the line that's going to stick with people. This is the line that MAGA is going to say. This is the line that Pam Bondi is going to say, Alina Habba, all these people, Benny Johnson. He did nothing wrong. They released the documents. It says it right there. They dropped the case. There was nothing there. And when you read the documents, you're like, yeah, no, it looks like he defrauded New York City out of $10 million, and he accepted bribes, and he took money from foreign nationals. And then on top of that, he and everyone around him worked tirelessly to shield their conversations from anyone ever being able to see them.
Yeah. I'll take it even further. It's not just Adams. We're seeing, it's not just the city of New York, but we're seeing like the entire state. This is something that surprised me, when I dug into this. It's just how much corruption it seems to trickle down from the state level down to the city. And what to me separates the guys who got in trouble back then from Eric Adams right now is just like you said, Eric Adams' ability to kind of like ride low information people to kind of like kind of feed their low information feed the low information voters, like he's to me he's a sociopath because he can look at you and lie about something that you saw him do like 10 minutes ago. And it's that perception management that he's so great at that I think is has kept him in politics, even though you go back again to the 20 teens and there was, the papers were saying that Eric Adams, his future political career is in jeopardy, that a lot of politicians are kind of staying away from him. Here we are, more than 10 years from that, and Eric Adams is the mayor. Even after something that should have quite honestly ended his political career, like it ended a lot of the other political careers I've mentioned here, some of whom were not indicted, but their political careers were ruined. They lost, and that was the end of it. But here he is, Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City, and even with the mountains of allegations that he's faced, right? All the people that have quickly run out the door from his administration under heavy suspicion, and yet Eric Adams is still there in the he's still on the stage, and not only that, but he unfortunately seems to have Trump in his corner. So we're seeing a guy who's like a master of perception and a master of kind of like worming his way out of situations and prolonging that political career, which to any other politician would have ended like a decade ago. And I think that's his skill, and in a lot of ways I think that's why he continues to get a lot of support from a lot of these billionaires and real estate, big business figures and real estate figures in the city, because they know he's great at worming his way out of situations that would have buried a lesser skilled politician.
Well, I mean that, and the fact that he's filling their pockets. I mean,
yeah,
I mean he's useful. I mean, let's just get it out there. He's the contracts that he's willing to give away, the money he's willing to basically give away to these corporations. Everyone's the border is like the hot topic, right? The immigration raids are the hot topic. Nobody talks about why is New York City still paying $1.2 billion a year to New York City hotels to house illegals? Why is that contract was signed? It's still going to follow another 3 years, another $1.2 billion for 3 more years each year. And guess who's going to benefit from that? New York City hotel owners. Like, why? If we're doing such a great job, why are we concerned with funding these $1.2 billion? Again, when you looked at Congress and when they brought the sanctuary city mayors up, they basically, no one went at Eric Adams. It was a disgrace to watch. I was like, wow, we really just need this 2-party system's got to go. We need like like an American party. Before I go any further, we got about 7,100 people on here this morning. Thanks for joining. For those of you on Instagram, for whatever reason, we can't see your comments. So if you want to comment, go join us on X or join us on YouTube, where the chat's live. There's a lot of people in the chat today. So if you ever want to weigh in, I mean, because we have a lot of comments, we'll try to get to most of them. But I think, I think that's the bigger point in all this is that Eric Adams, if he's not corrupt, he totally gives the appearance of it. So to go further in the City article, there's a section in it. Where's the phone? The search warrant also suggests a string of deceptions from Adams about where are the whereabouts of his devices. During the September announcement of the indictment, prosecutors revealed that Adams claimed when he was initially approached by agents seeking all of his devices in a village after an event, he admitted he had another personal phone that he promised to turn over the next day. The records unsealed Friday, however, assert that GPS tracking data led investigators to conclude he actually had the phone in his possession at the time the FBI took his devices. What happens when you lie to an FBI agent, Marlon? Which he clearly did here.
Yeah. That's a big no-no if you're lying to the FBI, okay? Because that in itself is a crime. But it's I don't understand I just can't understand why this entire thing was dropped. You see it right there. That alone is reason not to have dropped this case. But and yet still they drop this. Like how much more mountains of evidence would you need against Eric Adams before he gets indicted? It's yeah, it's absurd. But I just want to give a quick shout out to the Hellgate because they have a website called the Eric Adams Table of Success. And if you guys who are watching us right now have trouble following along as well, that's still a great site to understand what's going on with Eric Adams and understand all the players around him. And I'm saying this because like a lot of the issues that went on back then are still going on now because this is all tied to real estate, right? And this is again why I don't understand why they dropped the case, because back then SL Green was one of those real estate firms that were vying to get Aqueduct, and guess who's vying to get another casino now in Midtown? Well, SL Green. So it's I again, I don't understand it. This is a case that should have never been dropped, and how much more do we need before we take before the feds take this seriously and get Adams out of his get him out of the stage.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to Paul Morrow because I played a video from him a couple of days back prior to this unsealment, and he basically alluded to everything that you're reading now. He said in that video, if you go back and watch that, Paul Morrow, Opsdex, he's also a Fox News contributor. He's doing great work, honestly. I was like, I got to give a shout out to him, and his sources were dead accurate. Where he had said that, when the FBI agents rolled up on Adams to get his devices, that it appeared that they just took his word for it. They didn't toss him like he was a perp, but he lied to them like he was. Right? He's like, oh, I don't have my phone on me. I'll give it to you. He was a hustler. He street hustled them. And what's he going to say now? Oh, I didn't know I had it on me. I found out later. Oh, I didn't even know. I got so much stuff with me. I didn't know it was there. And this is exactly what happened. So they look at the GPS data, and when the FBI agents rolled up on him, took his devices, he claimed he didn't have that phone with him when in fact he did. Contradicting Adams' claims to investigators that he left his personal phone at City Hall, unable to lock it after changing the password, then brought it to his attorney at Gracie Mansion later that evening. The feds later learned through his cell phone location data that Adams' personal cell phone had been moved from City Hall on the evening of November 6th, roughly an hour before the Washington Square Park event, and had traveled northbound to 29th and 6th, when it was turned to airplane mode, or its battery died. Location information for the Adams' personal cell phone is inconsistent with the representation Adams made, the court documents say. When Adams finally turned the phone over to law enforcement, he claimed he changed the password, but he couldn't remember the configuration. Since then, the FBI has struggled in vain to gain access to it, asserting that communications with others indicate that this was the phone he was used in most of his interactions about soliciting contributions prosecutors alleged were illegal. The FBI was so hard-pressed to locate Adams' devices that in mid-September 24, shortly before his indictment, it obtained a warrant to use a cell site simulator, also known as a Stingray, in his vicinity to locate his devices. So they were actually looking to just tail everything that could be popping up around him because he's so shifty in his movements. And that basically confirms what Marlon said. He knows how to evade law enforcement because he was wrapped up in all of it, and he learned from it, and he got better at it, and he continued with the schemes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when you see all these things happening to Eric Adams, and he's clearly gotten away with it now, right? You have to wonder what is actually going on behind the scenes now with the race to build several casinos throughout the city, including Coney Island, Times Square, and we all know how they want to empty out Rikers Island so they could turn that into some sort of luxury and entertainment venue, right? You have to wonder what's going on there, okay? Because there are billions at stake here, okay? So back in the 20 teens again, let's go back to Aqueduct. The Aqueduct now, as it exists now, is one of the most profitable slot machine uh, casinos with a raceway in the country. One of the most profitable slotting casinos in the country. So if the company that won it eventually was not the company that was giving out donations to the state Democratic campaign committee and uh giving out you know campaign money to Eric Adams. After the case and in the investigation, they were dropped, and it was another company that won it. So that company that won it has benefited a lot from having that raceway. So can you imagine? Can you imagine with the amount of people that go to Manhattan and the scope of their plans for these new casinos, the amount of money that's at stake? Why would you drop this case now when there is so much at stake now? And having dropped the case now, you kind of empower politicians like Eric Adams and whoever else wants to follow in that same vein to commit corruption as well. It sets a bad precedent when the exact opposite precedent should have been started to show that there's somebody watching you, and that you're going to have a transparent and fair process. You know,
I mean,
it's
well, do you think any of this stopped though? Like, I'm saying that now it's like he's basically operating with impunity. It's like, oh well, they didn't get me the first time. Why am I gonna stop? We're back up. Different phones, different signal app. Let's go. We learn again. We're a little smarter this time. This time we're gonna do it this way. Like I personally think they're back in full force. The only issue here is they can't get the matching funds. You know why? Because the city can't election board or campaign finance board. You know what they're saying? No, you're denied. You know why you're denied? Because you violated federal, state, and city law. So we're not going to. You're not eligible. Your campaigns are no longer eligible for matching funds. And he appealed, and silently and very curiously, with no media attention, he was denied matching funds based upon what occurred in this FBI investigation. And nobody's talking about that. So I mean, that's something that, like, for the people that are claiming it's political, answer that. Is it still political? Is the campaign finance board still attacking him for his stance on the borders? Or do they have an actual argument that no, it looks like he misused matching funds and he no longer is eligible for it? Because to me, it looks like, yeah, I don't think that he deserves to get matching funds. Because guess what? If they did give him matching funds, guess what would happen? There would be straw donors. There would be foreign entities coming in, giving him money, and he would defraud the taxpayers of New York City out of millions and millions of dollars into his campaign, which he would use that too. Eddie West asked a question. I just want to get into that before we go any further. He said, "Hey, John and Marlon, do you think DA Bragg will charge Adams? Question mark. Also, do you think it's possible for Letitia James could possibly be charged on the state level by DA Eric Gonzalez in Brooklyn for fraud?" Two crazy questions. One, I'll go first, Marlon, and then if you want to answer, I personally don't think Bragg is going to charge Adams. I think that deal was already done when Kathy Hochul refused to remove him after him not having a security clearance, not being able to see if we were under terroristic threats. I mean, basically, the guy who said he's the pilot of the plane was basically flying New York City blindfolded for over a year, and so were all of the heads of the NYPD. So they weren't able to get top secret clearance or information related to protect millions of New Yorkers. So, and I think the fact that he wasn't removed from his position then, and it was only that when he got pat on the head, when Holman dragged him around the yard, like, yeah, hold my pocket, I'm going to take you on national TV, and you're going to, pour me my lemonade and do all this. It wasn't until that point that Kathy Hochul even started talking about it. So I think that, I think the Democrats move in lockstep, and I think he kind of checkmated them. And I think that if they could have done it, they would have did it already. They would have removed him. If they think they could have got away with that, they would have did that already. Or if they thought they could charge him at a state level, they would have already. I do think something's coming down the pipeline for Adams, though, completely unrelated to this case, by the way. I think it's going to have something to do with his properties. I don't have any confirmation on that, but I think we're going to see something around that. You see something coming up with Jumaane Williams now. As far as Letitia James, now we know there's a criminal investigation into her. Why she is still seated as New York City's top cop is beyond me. I have zero clue why that's happening. I'm not saying to remove her salary. I'm saying that she should be sidelined until this investigation's over, because she cannot move she should not be able to be New York City's top cop. She is under a heavy realm of scrutiny. She should have stepped down. If the governor appears to be completely unwilling to move her, that's why she ran to the National Action Network, just like Eric Adams did. So that if there is any talk of her being removed, she could pull the race card like Eric Adams did, and hurt Kathy Hochul in the governor race, right? Pull the black vote away from her, paint her as a racist. So I don't think that she's going to be removed. I think she should step down, obviously, because the evidence against her is so much. But she just watched what Eric Adams did. So there's always that play there. Let's just say it's political. What she's doing, she's painting it. She's talking about she's moving in lockstep like Eric Adams. So do I think the state's going to charge her? No. But if for some reason she steps down, if for some reason this case goes through, because Trump's DOJ, I don't think is going to play ball with her like they did with Eric Adams. I think you're going to see Eric Gonzalez possibly as the attorney general, or if she's sidelined, he may be acting attorney general. So I don't see it. I don't see them. They move in lockstep, the Democrats, and I don't see it. Like, what do you think, Marlon?
Well, I don't think so. For the first question, whether DA Bragg is going to charge like Eric Adams, I don't see that happening at all. And I think there's a lot of money at play here with all these casinos, and I think Eric Adams is like the perfect kind of fall guy to let do the dirty work in this case, And I think there's so much crumbs involved for everybody that they're more than happy to let Eric Adams play the point man. Now, the other reason why I don't think anything is going to happen is because, DA Bragg isn't the first Manhattan DA who could have done something about all this corruption. Cy Vance back in the 2010s was sent a referral about what was going on with Sampson and Eric Adams in Brooklyn, and Cy Vance didn't do anything back then. So why would I think that Eric Bragg why would I think that Bragg is going to do something now? It's all part of they're all part of the Democrat machine, and in a lot of ways they kind of blackmail each other and exert force on each other. But in this case, I think there's a lot of money at play here, and I don't think, just like there's a lot of money at play with Aqueduct, I don't think any of them is going to charge Eric Adams, because the other fact is that Eric Adams has big league real estate behind him too, and big real estate uh, has a lot of movers and shakers in the city that fund the campaigns of all these city officials, and they're once again behind Eric Adams on this one because they again want to see the casinos happen. So I don't think that's happening. As for Tish, um, well, I think Tish is so neck deep in her mortgage fraud that I think she one way or the other she's not going to be there. You know, I think there's just too much momentum behind the stuff that has been uncovered, and I think as I said on Friday, as was the case with Harvey Weinstein back in the 20 teens, and Harvey Weinstein was like for a long time he got away with what he did on both coasts of America and in Europe, right? He got away with it because he was very powerful and very influential. But at a certain point, like the allegations became too much baggage for anybody to get behind this guy. And that's why I think ultimately he went down, you know? And I think with Tish James, it's a different situation, but I think there's so much baggage with her fraud allegations that at a certain point she becomes too much baggage for the state democratic machine to get behind her, and she brings too much attention to all of them. And as we've seen with Joel Gilbert has said, and Jason Goodman of Crowdsource the Truth, they've uncovered other issues of mortgage fraud related to other politicians, Democrat politicians. So at a certain point, it's too much. She's bringing too big of a spotlight on all of them, and that's why I think she's gonna go one way or the other. So.
Pat Donahue says, here's a big question. Why did members of Adam's security detail allegedly have to sign an NDA to be assigned to his protective detail? You know, so it wasn't just them. There was actually an NDA being asked to be signed by basically everyone in One Police Plaza. They were trying to force it. It kind of just fell by its wayside. So I'm not sure that Adam's security detail did sign that NDA. I'm pretty sure that they would. If I was a betting man, I would say they did. But in other offices, like the chief of department's office, the police commissioner's office, and a lot of others, there were NDAs being asked to be signed, and then they kind of fell because they didn't want to make news of it. You know, while they're, having secret cell phones, they're putting anti-bugging devices everywhere. They're sweeping their offices. Nothing's going on there, right? A lot of that had to stem from the podcast, though. I'll be honest with you. A lot of them had to do with they knew what they were going to do to harm people's careers. They knew the harm they were going to cause to anyone else. And they kind of didn't want anyone running here and then jumping on the podcast. So, and then letting the public know exactly what happened. They knew they had the media, right? So they were like, we could control that, but we can't control these independent sources. So a lot of that had to do with the Finest Unfiltered. So, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me, dude. I if I had to bet, I would say that that's exactly what was going on. Let's go a little further into this article. The marathon finish. The evidence described in the unsealed records would have played a central role in the trial that was canceled after the Trump administration walked away from the case. Because Ho was forced to dismiss the case, the public never got to see the basis for charges. Prosecutors defended as strong and Adams' lawyers called weak. So what Ho did, he was ruling on whether or not that the DOJ could actually drop the case. He wasn't ruling on the merits of the case, right? He had nothing to do. It had anything to do. He wasn't saying, well, the case is strong and you should charge him. His job was, can the DOJ drop the case? And his finding was basically like, well, they could do a million things to stall this. So if they want to drop the case, I technically can't force them to continue this, right? They could just let the statute of limitations run out before they ever bring down the other charges. I can't force anyone to do it. And that was basically his ruling. Had nothing to do with the merits of the lawsuit. which that's another thing that's being painted. It's like, oh, Ho found nothing wrong with what Adams did. No, he never weighed in on it. That wasn't his trial to weigh in on. His decision to weigh in on was, can the DOJ drop the charges? And his finding was, yes, they actually can, because I can't force them to investigate and prosecute. So the new documents reveal evidence prosecutors presented to judges last year to obtain approval for search warrants leading up to Adams' 2024 indictment. That includes a request to gain access to cell phones and laptops with text messages between Adams and mayoral campaign aides communicating about mayor's travel perks and campaign fundraising. They were also used to obtain internal records of Adams' 2021 and 2025 campaigns to corroborate discussions about fundraising. At times included the mayor, including messages exchanged with fundraisers already prosecuted in straw donor schemes. In addition to the exchanges between Adams and Bahi, the warrant applications included 2019 and 2020 messages about matching fund eligible donations sent between Adams and Dwayne Montgomery, who pleaded guilty to conspiracy in a case brought by Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. Federal investigators also sought to seize 5 cell phones at a Fort Lee, New Jersey apartment they said was frequented by Adams and described as that of his partner, Tracy Collins. Investigators allege Collins, a longtime DOE employee, most recently senior advisor to the deputy chancellor, sought to help the Turkish consul general's son into a select public middle school, MS 255 Salk School of Science in Manhattan. According to the text messages shared in March of 23, Collins, whose name is redacted from the filings, agreed to contact the director of intergovernmental affairs for the DOE. A footnote in the documents later says DOE records don't show the son enrolled at the Salk School. The documents released Friday show the extraordinary steps law enforcement took to work around obstacles Adams and his aides had set up to avoid detection. The day they first confronted the mayor with a search warrant for his devices, November 5th, 2023, happened to be the same day as the New York Marathon. As one agent put it in seeking a judge's approval to serve the warrant, investigators even considered confronting him at the marathon's finish line. Ultimately, they demurred to approaching him instead the next day in the Village. I mean, so they had to work around all of these roadblocks that Eric Adams put in place to avoid detection.
Yeah. Yep. So Christina Williams in the chat asked a good question. She says, do you think all these people who took plea deals in Adams' Fed case are going to appeal due to the feds dropping his case? And to that, I'll say that I came across a piece that said that Mohammed Bai, he took a plea, but he's yet to sign it. So I think that's something that I keep an eye out on. There may be further legal action on that. And Serena Townsend, if you've seen her on South Shore about maybe about a week and a half ago now, she brought up the point that if she was their attorneys, she would be asking, she'd be asking for a renegotiation or to further talk to them about this, concerning this. So it's something to keep an eye out on. But yeah. I just to go back on that previous question again, it's something that's kind of sticking in my head, about if Bragg is going to charge Adams, right? I mean, something for you guys to think about, right? A couple days ago, Adrienne Adams was an article came out in the Post about her funneling $3 million to $3 million of taxpayer money to a church in Queens. That church is the AME Cathedral, which is a big church in Jamaica, Queens. So the leader of that church is Floyd Flake, and I'm not sure if he's still alive, but I believe his wife is still there in charge. But anyway, so she's accused of funneling $3 million to that church. Now, what's interesting about that is this isn't the first time that that church has been roped up in scandal, right? That church was also part of Eric Adams' mess in the 2010s, because back then Floyd Flake who's a former congressman himself, was acting kind of like a lobbyist for the AEG group trying to get Aqueduct. So my point here is that if Bragg was going to charge Adams, he certainly has a lot of improprieties going on right here with the other Adams, in city government, and neither of them are going to get the attention, So if he's not going to charge Adams here, he's definitely not going to. If he's not going to look at Adams here, he's definitely not going to look at Eric Adams. Give him anything, It's all a big web of corruption involving these political figures in New York City.
I'm not going to come after you when you have dirt on me.
Yeah.
And that's basically what's happening, And unfortunately, a lot of good U.S. attorneys had their careers stolen from them, honestly, at the hands of politicians. So it just shows how weaponized the DOJ remains and how weaponized law enforcement throughout this country remains. The politicians are in charge of law enforcement, and they unfortunately all appear to be corrupt. And do we think, I know you answered it, Marlon, do we think that the people who took a plea deal are going to appeal? Yeah, I absolutely do. I think they're absolutely going to appeal, and I think their cases are going to get dropped. And he hasn't signed, Mohammed Bahi hasn't signed the guilty, and I don't blame him. Why would I? You just told us that the Trump DOJ just dropped charges against the guy you're coming after me for, and you said the whole case is political. I didn't say it. The DOJ said it. So drop my charges. I'm not accepting this. Absolutely not. Same for Dwayne Montgomery. So anything else on this before? Like I said, we'll bring in more of it as we go through the data more. Any other point you want to make before we get off of this?
Yeah, no, we could actually be here for hours talking about this, because there's so much that they've done presently that matches like a lot of the behavior of the past. I was just so I saw the Travel Act bribery charges that were levied against Malcolm Smith, right? So basically, the Travel Act bribery is basically if you go to another country and you commit. You basically conduct that business in the other country. That bribery happens in another country. You'll still get charged with that, right?
So
and
like if you went to Turkey and solicited donations
exactly.
and funds and bribes, like
yep.
that. Oh.
Or if you're like Ingrid Lewis Martin and you happen to take a trip to Japan with some bigwig real estate developers, right? Yeah, so it's
the same real estate developers that are actually in talks to get a city contract, and then you fly to Japan, they pay for the whole thing, and like that. Oh, weird.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought all that was legal. I don't know. I was just following what I saw in New York City. I didn't know.
Yeah. So it's just crazy. You want to see what's going to happen going forward, you go back in the past and look at all the stuff tied to Eric Adams. So like John says, there's a lot here, and I'm sure we're going to have follow-up episodes and further discussion on it. So
yeah, absolutely. So real quick, Mike Smith, what's up, brother? From the free state of South Carolina. He's here. He's talking about the retention bill. I think we got to go into deep on it, but real quick, my thoughts on the retention bill. My thoughts on Tier 3 getting a 20-year retirement. We don't have the full details on it. We got to work to get all that, like how that's going to play in with all the other benefits that Tier 3 had. Did that remove any? There's all different questions around that. Is that 20? Is it really a 20-year full retirement? Do they still get that escalation that they were supposed to get at 25 years? There's a lot of questions that remain unanswered at this point. I think they're being worked out. Obviously, there's going to be some concessions. I mean, I think we all know that. I think it's a win for the tier 3 guys. I think basically getting the 5% at 25 years and the 10% at 30 years or whatever that is, that other retention bill. Listen, they're good for the people that stay. Is that going to entice many people to stay? I don't think so. Is that going to attract new candidates? I don't think so. And is it going to retain experienced candidates? I don't think so. So, like, I don't know, like, what it really doing to boost the morale. I don't know what it's. I mean, I know it's giving people, if they only had like 3 years to go, maybe they hang out the 3 years to get to the 20. I just traditionally don't see people staying doing 25 anymore. They used to say 25 is the new 20. Now they say 10 is the new 20. And I've been in New York City for almost a week now, and I've met up with a lot of my friends, a lot of people, most of them in the NYPD, and they're all leaving, man. They don't, or they have a plan to leave. No one's like the young guys, they're experienced guys, they're competent guys. They're people who have great careers, and they all got a plan. They said the morale's so bad. What do you think about these bills, Marlon? Do you think it's going to stop the exodus? It's going to help recruit or retain anybody?
Well, absolutely not, because I agree with what you said prior, that it's not really about the money. It's about the environment in the police department. It's about the morale. It's about the quality of life on the job, and a lot of that is gotten to the point of being unbearable, so unbearable that the money. People look at the money and think, is this worth it? Anymore. Now, I on Friday, I spoke to a friend who's he has a couple more months to go, and he's ready to go at 20. And I thought I figured he would stay at least until 25, but he tells me that morale is even worse than how we talk about on the show. It's even worse than we think, and guys can't wait to run out that door. Now, me personally, I've said before that I think the 20-year coming back was a pipe dream, and I'm very surprised that it's actually back. But my concerns for the 20-year coming back was not that it's impossible to come back. My concerns were, where's the money coming from? We live in an age where pensions are unfunded liabilities that every big city has a problem with right now, because the issue is that people live much longer than lives than they used to in the past, and cities just don't have the money, the funds, the pension funds themselves just don't have the money to keep steady returns in there. And in the case of New York City, when the solvency ratio falls to a certain point, the city has to make up that difference. If you're in a down cycle economy, the city has to make up the difference so that the pension fund stays solvent, right? But how can a city make up the difference when the city itself is going through fiscal trouble? Like I said before, like, New York City isn't an island. There are other cities in America, other cities that are attracting young people. Okay, that New York City, you're in competition with these new cities. You can't just rely on being New York City and these decades of success, because things change. Technology changes. Technology decentralizes the workforce. So whereas you need to be in a gigantic city before, you don't need to anymore. And you have other states that are making moves to attract young people. For instance, I read over the weekend that Missouri is thinking about getting rid of capital gains taxes, and that's incredible, because if you're a young person now, you're looking at these places. Florida's tax-free, Texas is tax-free. Now, no capital gains in Missouri. Why are you going to stay in New York City and New York State and pay 13% of your income on top of federal taxes to government? So again, my concerns are, where are they going to get the money to pay for all of this? Because people and businesses are hemorrhaging, and they're leaving the state. And once they leave, they take your tax base too. There's no magical tree in Albany or in City Hall that you can go to and pluck cash out of thin air. Doesn't work that way. So
No, I
I
mean,
can
dude, it's a great point. And like like we said it before, the way they manage the police department, the way they treat the rank and file is the same way they treat New York State and New York City residents. And so, like, you can't look, Mike's on here, Mike, and if you're available Friday, hit us up, Mike. Jump on, with me and Marlon, and but like I'm in New York City this week, and I always said, like, I shop locally, I buy locally, I support my local restaurants. I did that this week, but I used to do that 330 something days of the year. Like, you know what I mean? I used to and you would suck all my tax money out, and I would only see like a third of what I actually really earned and everything else. And like, that goes for my whole family and all that stuff. And there are hundreds of thousands of people like me, like Mike Smith, like Eric Dim, that are like, what am I saying here for? So, and they're doing nothing to retain New York City residents, nothing to retain New York State residents, and nothing to recruit new people in, or get those people back. So to me, I'm like, I don't see it. But we'll get into that. I think Pat Donahue nails it on the head. The pension enhancement bill only benefits those already with 26 to 30 years. Who are those people? They're a handful of people in specialized units or long-term investigative units, or particularly those in the unions, right? Those are the people that are going to stay the longest. Why? Because they're not doing what they're negotiating. So again, I think it does nothing to actually help out with the retention. But whatever. We'll get into that. We'll discuss that more at a later date. Eddie Westbrook just sent a notice from the pension, from the police pension fund, and they basically just said what we said. It reduces from 22 years to 20 years. A lot of unanswered questions, more details to follow. So we'll see what comes out with that. Another thing that came out recently, little annoyed about it. Eric Adams and Brandy Maestro are now telling Joanne Ariola they have a plan to return all of those who left city employment or were terminated, like Marlon Bethel, without due process, to now 3 years later, 3.5 years later, right before the election, to return those people to city service. I don't believe that salary's on the table. I don't believe that time is on the table. So they're just going to say, oh yeah, Marlon, you could come back now, bro. Forget about all the harm we caused you the last 3 years. We're not going to pay you for any of that, and none of that time counts, and you can't buy any of that stuff back. But you could come back now and work for us. What are your thoughts on that, Marlon? You were terminated. I put a video out online about it. I'm sticking by my guns with it. I think it's a slap in the face. I'm 100% not dropping my lawsuit, and I'll see you in court. Like, unless it's compensate and reinstate, and then I would consider dropping my lawsuit. If it's anything but that, I'm not dropping it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't trust the city, and we have plenty precedent to not trust what they're doing here, And if they're gonna say, okay, we're gonna pull you back, and we're not gonna talk about recompensating you for all that lost time and for lost wages, then that's a problem. Because when are we gonna talk about it? Like, if I go back, I'll be at 18 years right now. So that means I only have 2 years left. So when are we gonna talk about it? I have this massive hole in my pension for years of not contributing to it. When are we going to talk about it? That means that if I go back now, I can't retire at 20. That means I got to stay until 25 at least to make up for all that, all the money I haven't contributed to my pension fund. I think it's a trap. Again, it's a trap, and I'm very suspicious of why it's happening now. And happening now as Adams is desperate any way he can to get support for re-election. Just the same why the unions got what they did now. It's very curious why it's all happening now, because I think these politicians need the unions on their side, and they've made some that these changes are huge promises that I don't necessarily think they can, in the long run, afford to pay, but they're making these promises now. And the question is, why now? And the answer is more than likely we're in election season. So they're going to promise you the moon to get you your support and get you to shut up. And that's why I'm suspicious of what Adams is doing. And you should be too.
Yeah, 100%. And this isn't a knock on Joanna Ariola or her chief of staff, Billis and Cirillo. Like they've done nothing but fight for people. They've been at the forefront of all of this. So I'm not knocking them at all. I feel like there is more nefarious play at hand with the Adams administration and the city. And they're doing it at a time when the Trump administration is compensating and reinstating all of the members of the military based on a federal lawsuit, right? And we have that city precedent with the Garvey case and sanitation, where everybody 3.5 years ago was told to return to work with back pay and you would go right back to your assignment and all that other stuff. And Eric Adams refused to. Until today, he's spending millions of dollars trying to litigate that case, where the mandate was deemed arbitrary and capricious, and it was deemed that it violated the civil rights of New York City workers. Whoa, shocker, right? Like, I don't think anybody's shocked by that. So, like, I'm not going to sign on to anything that, oh, yeah, no, this is so great. Like, no. You're going to come to the table. You're going to sit down with the people. You're not going to work with one politician. You're not going to work with just a minority. You're going to work with the people that were harmed, and we're all going to come to an agreement. Or it's full of crap, and you're just trying to save the city money at this point and screw us. And I'm sorry, buddy, but it ain't happening with me. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but like, nah, this should have been rectified 3.5 years ago. I should have been retiring now at about 21 years on or something like that. And I'll tell you, if I probably wouldn't have left, because I probably would have been a captain now, probably would have stayed to 25. But I'll tell you one thing I wouldn't have did. I wouldn't have left New York City. I definitely wouldn't have left New York City. I would have been hosing my concrete, all that. Because I still love the city. Like, I'm here now. I love it, and I would probably have a house in Florida. Yeah. And I would travel back and forth. But you guys know my older daughter is legally blind. I mean, New York City is a better place for her to live. As far as like getting around, being able to work, the services that are available. So, I mean, that's why I'm always here. That's why I always come back. That's why I'm so focused. I stay on New York City is because I still love it. I mean, like, I feel like I was forced out, and I feel like the fact that New York City is doing nothing for people like me to try to get us back into, whether it's city service, whether it's just coming back and opening a business, whether it's just coming back and living here in retirement. I'm too young to be retired, but why wouldn't you want, the podcast to come back to New York City, like, why wouldn't you want all these things? Like, I don't see that happening. And so, yeah, I mean, everything's a play on an election, right? Everything's a play on that. And I also think it's a play to, it's a play to kind of screw people that they owe money to and people they harmed. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have been back a year after when they dropped the mandate. It's just they try to screw you. They threw the waiver in front of us. Oh, you can come back, but you're not getting any back pay. So that year that you haven't been contributing, that money that you took out your pension, oh, forget about it. That shortage in your pension is that's your problem now. That's not our problem. Even though we illegally got rid of you, and we were wrong, So there's plenty precedents for us not to trust the city, and by the way, not to trust the unions, because again, like I said, when just before the city got rid of me, my union, the DEA, said, "Oh, you know what? We're gonna use you to help arbitrate more money. Okay, we're not gonna fight the mandate, but we're gonna use you to arbitrate it. Oh, and by the way, you have to agree to the terms of the arbitration, which may not include you getting your job back. Oh, and you have to sign this waiver. Okay. So it's like there's plenty precedents for us not to trust them because they're always trying to screw us somehow. It's never straightforward, and I don't think what's happening now is going to be straightforward either. And again, we talked about this on Friday when I said that it seems to me that to cover past malfeasance, what we're going to see is a lot of present unethical behavior because they've gotten themselves into a sinkhole and they need to worm their way out of it, and they don't want to be transparent in any of these processes. So
Yeah. Another thing that happened over the weekend, confines at a 7-2 precinct, NYPD cop took his life, young cop. Fortunate incident, took his life, I believe, in his home with his wife. It was stated on the 911 call that it was over. They were going through a divorce. And I like, so everyone sends me like, oh, the cop just killed himself, and horrible, right? Horrible. Like how much, and obviously you look like how much time did he have on? He only had a year and a half on. You're like, well, it can't be the stresses of the job that with only a year and a half on. And I think I've said that prior to, and then I was like kind of thinking about it, and I'm like, I went back to like just being young and my life before being a cop, and then my life going into the NYPD. Like I was always a party kid, I was always a club kid, I always worked, but I had like normal jobs, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I'd go out Thursday night. I would go out on Monday nights too. I'd go out Thursday through basically Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, schoolwork, whatever. And then going into the police department, it's like it's such a transition. You're not going out anymore. Like I'm not going to clubs anymore. I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday. Sometimes I'm even, and the hours I'm working, I'm not around when everybody's going out. I'm not getting out of work till late at night. And it was a transition, I think, for me as a young kid, like in early 20s. And I can't imagine what that transition is for if you're married with kids. And I think that's one of the factors that, like, when we talk about people experiencing divorce in law enforcement and then there's suicide attached to that, I think we don't look at, that's to me, that's a deflection from the job, saying, oh, it wasn't because of us. It was because of his own internal issues. And it's like, well, would that divorce have happened if it wasn't for the job? What were the stresses on that marriage? When did they occur? Did they occur when he started? Did they occur because of his days off? Did they occur the fact he's never around? Did they occur to the fact that the wife is like, I don't want this type of life? Like, this isn't the type of life I want. I want a husband that's home. I don't want him to do this. And so, like, that's all the things I was thinking about. Ron Layson and Rob Lukash, they actually had someone from the NYPD on. I forget the gentleman's name, the doctor's name, but there are resources available to you guys. And I know that sounds like whatever. It's like just cliche. Oh yeah, whatever, that resources available. But just again, that's a decision you cannot come back from, man. I've been to some real low points in my life. I've been broke. I've had money, went to being broke again. I've been in real relationships that have went down the tubes. I've made mistakes. I've had bad things happen to me. I know one thing: there are dark times in life. One day you wake up, the sun's shining, and you forget all about it, and you're loving life again. So, again, just before you make that decision, try everything else.
yeah, yep. Yeah. Like we said, there was the episode of Executive Perspective has there's a doctor who works with the health and wellness unit that came on, and he gave a lot of helpful information, and there's a lot of resources that you guys can check out. It's there are better ways. It's not it's not the way that you should go about it. So you know um Rob Lukash in the comments says that that the unions will now say to support Eric Adams. Yeah, I have no doubt that, and in fact, I just like to remind everyone that the DEA, I believe, still uses Vito Pita's law firm, a subsidiary of his law firm, and he's Eric Adams. He's one of Eric Adams' attorneys. So
Nothing to see there, Marlon. I don't. Why would you say that?
Yeah.
Don't. Why would you say that?
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. I mean, and again, you know, Scott Moreau was on here. He was going to help you. Have you heard from him?
Yeah, we're still yet to have this mythical meeting. You know, even though, like I said to him, like, why do we need a meeting? You already know, like, my issue. You know, but I told him, give me a date. You know. I don't know what we're gonna talk about because I've already said plenty on here, and you know what you got to do. But again, it's I'm not gonna hold my breath.
And then here's the other thing, right? Like, you know, there are a few thousand people who were affected by all this, but there's a couple of notable people that have been at the forefront of this and pushing back on this mandate from day one. I was doing it prior to even Adams coming into office, right? I basically retired and went directly on Fox News. You know, that was how it happened, you know, and I was speaking out against the mandate. And then I started hitting media ever since, talking about it, going out online, talking about it. So here's the other thing, you know, people like, oh, are you going to go back? I mean, could we really go back? I mean, me, Marlon, you got Mike Kane for Teachers for Choice. You have people from Bravest for Choice that have been speaking out. You have Danny Holkauer, George Garvey for the Sanitation Department, many other people across all professions. But there's a handful of us, and, you know, it's not to be noted, you know, it can't be ignored that, you know, I mean, the entire mayor's staff follows us on social media. I mean, we have them transcribing every episode we do. Could we really return to city service under this administration? I don't believe so. You know, I don't. And so does that mean that we shouldn't be compensated for the harm that we did? Does that mean that that Marlon shouldn't get back pay and his time restored? I mean, like I said, I think I go back 100%. I put that uniform on. I don't know how long that lasts for me, but I think I'm going to be minding my P's and my Q's. Not that I ever did anything wrong, but there will be a campaign to get myself fired, and I believe that would be true for everybody else, including you.
Absolutely. I know 100% they would try and get me, but, like, you know, GI Bro mentions that that I'd be given a lot of overtime and be on all out. Yeah, I have no doubt that, GI Bro, but you know, I've worked pretty much every precinct in Brooklyn North, you know, so throw me in the Bronx, you know, I'll have a ball in the Bronx. Okay, that doesn't being on patrol again on a foot post. You could put me on a foot post in the 7-3 again, and believe me, I'll have fun. There's something I always said, like when you're an active cop, there's really nothing they can do to you. You know, you're gonna put me inside. Okay, all right, no problem. I'll be inside. I'll sit on a computer and I'll drop my fives. Oh, you're gonna put me on a foot post in the Bronx at midnight? Okay, all right, bring it on. You know, that stuff doesn't bother me at all. You know, like I said, the issues though are that you can't say you're gonna bring us back and not talk about the fact that we haven't contributed to our pensions in all this time. You know, we have shortages, and that's gonna those people who signed the waivers to come back, they've had to fill those shortages themselves. You know, the if there's no compensation for it, you're essentially extending the time frame that you're going to be on this job. So it's not about like putting us on all out or whatnot. That stuff, I don't lose sleep over that. You know, even if they want to send, they would send internal affairs to follow me every day from work. Go ahead, because I live a boring life myself. You know, you're not going to find anything on me. Okay, but the issue is that I haven't contributed to my pension, and you have, if you're gonna have a conversation about bringing us all back, you have to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's even bigger than the back pay, right? Like that's, like how people buy back time? Like cities should buy back our time, and then retire us as that date if we want to come back or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, but we should not have pension shortages at all. There should be no pension gap. There should be zero break in service. Like I said, anything around that, we're willing to have conversations about with the people who have been out in the forefront alongside of us. But anything other than that is not a real conversation. GI Bro says, John, how could you ever come back with Chief Shell in charge? You know he's going to come after you. I'm with Marlon. I always took the feather out of the hat. I never cared. I was like, is what it is. I never asked to go anywhere. I never tried to go anywhere. People gravitated to me, and I got a million offers. And I'm sure if I go back, people will gravitate to me again. So I'm not worried about being thrown out in the Bronx for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, or a year or two. My concern is not Chief Shell coming at me, because he's not going to come at me. He's going to send people to come at me. That's the concern. He's going to send the inspections, the IAB, and there's going to be sneaky retaliatory things done done. I'm not worried about him per se. Like I said, he's willing to come on this podcast. I'm willing to talk. You guys all have my number, right? How many times have you ran my name? You have all my contacts. Probably know my movements. Give me a call. We could talk offline. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the sneaky stuff. I'm not worried about it. I'll report to the chief's office right now. Like, I'm not worried about that. Everything I've done, I'm willing to talk about, and I've done it because I believe in it and I believe it's the right thing. So, and I'll talk to God about it. So if I could talk to him, I could talk to a 3-star chief about it. I could talk to a mayor, or I could talk to the president of the United States about it. It doesn't, so I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the sneaky stuff that everyone knows happens and would happen. Supposedly, what else are we being told? We're being told that there's now a CD stat for the inspections teams, and that, basically, if they're underperforming in inspections by not handing out enough CDs, they're now being put on the chopping block. So there's being pressure put on for numbers from police oversight to clamp down on the rank and file. I think that's always been. Do I think it's a smart move now when you can't recruit and you can't retain? No, I don't. I think a lot of what Jessica Tish is doing right now is feeling herself out and like what works and what's not. We've seen a lot of reactionary things, such as the MTA transit post, which till today, there's been no official order pulling that. I honestly think you should. I speak to people all the time. They're working hours. They're afraid to go in the transit rooms. They're worried about inspections. I think they are going back in the transit rooms, but I think something official should be put out from the police commissioner's office that there are designated transit rooms. And I don't think it should be done next week. I think it should be done today. I think it should be done this week, and get these guys that are working 12, 16 hours where they're able to take a break. And just a constant beat up of people, I think that's got to stop. I think that's got to stop. When people mess up, there needs to be discipline 100%. It doesn't have to be harsh discipline. If you're going to be nice and easy and gentle and soft at the top, at the upper echelon, because they're friends of Adams, then that should be the precedent you have with the rank and file. You can't disregard all the stuff what happened with the corruption and the overtime scandal, and then turn around and absolutely destroy anybody who makes a mistake. I mean, it's crushing the morale. People are not happy with Police Commissioner Tish. The rank and file is not happy with her at all. So I think that's another thing we should talk about later on in the week, maybe on Friday. Is she really doing a great job? I don't think so, because everyone I talk to is like, maybe at managing systems, maybe at appearances, yeah, she is. But as far as winning over the rank and file, the NYPD, we haven't shared all the memes we got, but there are plenty, and they come in hot and heavy, and they're warranted, and there's a lot of teeth behind them, and there's a lot of truth in them. So I think I just think there's no empathy towards the rank and file at all.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hearing the same thing that basically the policies are kind of like there's nothing consistent, and in a lot of ways she has a kind of like a Napoleon complex for being a woman PC, you know, and it's a shame, you know, the in what's going on now, the biggest problem in the department is the leadership right now, and that seems to be a problem that's not being addressed, you know, and it's one of the reasons why guys are leaving. You know, it all trickles down from one police plaza. So I appreciate the offer, stay trained up, but you know, I'm thinking that like my role is I kind of like what we do here, and you know, and as time goes on, we'll probably, you know, we'll try to expand, but I like kind of exposing public corruption now and being part of that, because I think one of the problems is like when I was a cop, I just wanted to be left alone. Just leave me alone and let me do my job. You know, I didn't care about the like the politics or the department, the stuff going on in the department. You know, because I thought I was kind of removed from it. You know, I always knew it was a problem, but let me do my job. You know, just leave me alone. And I realized at a certain point that you're not left alone to do your job. It's because of all the problems from the top kind of impede you from being the best cop that you can be. And I think cops will always run into that as long as like public corruption exists, and as long as cities like New York are facing so much corruption and leadership problems. So I think there's a role for us to make the job better for those guys who are still on the job, and to make it possible that they be left alone to do their jobs as cops. And in fact, I think a lot of retired cops should think about this. You know, there's a role for us, but to kind of watch over to watch over the administration so that the sheepdogs can do their jobs. You know, so
Well, I think that our voices are important in the public sector, with holding politicians, their appointed police managers accountable, as well as giving a real unfiltered voice on the public safety narrative. So you're not just getting it from little weasels that really have done nothing their entire life but con people into voting for them. Whatever is in front of their name, an R or a D, it doesn't matter to me. No difference between a Mike Lawler and that little weasel Keith Powers in city council. The only one has a D, one has an R. They're the same type of guy, in my opinion. They're both weasels. It's what it is. Like, I don't care what. Oh, this guy aligns with me a little bit. Like, I could care less. Guy's a weasel. He has nothing, has no business. He didn't keep himself safe in high school. He ain't keeping you safe in the streets of New York City. So I think there is, again, this is like the first version of analysts, like police analysts, like basically coming out, leaving the profession, and now we're talking about all of the things that are affecting the public safety sphere. You see it with the suspendables, Kyle Seraphin, Steve Friend, and you see all of the pushback they get from the FBI. They kind of do the same thing we do. We kind of bumped into each other in this whole sphere. I didn't even know they existed. Went on a podcast with them, and I was like, wow, I didn't even know you guys were out there. And it was basically the same thing. They call out all of the ills of the FBI, and they're heavily targeted by the FBI because of it. And, they were close with Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, and now they're in there and they're calling them out, and they're having issues with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and the FBI. And so it's like, it really mirrors what's happening. And I think that's kind of what's happening across the media sphere, is you're actually getting actual experts instead of people beholden to this or to some politician speaking up about their true, honest opinions. Billy says, John, do you consider this entire situation a case of self-inflicted wounds? Depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about the situation with myself and Marlon, no. I think we were presented with a problem, and we were presented with, honestly, a grave civil rights injustice, and we actually stood our ground. So any wounds we got afflicted as a result of that were due to a battle that really not only me and Marlon should have had, but our unions and the entire rank and file and of all of the city agencies should have had. So I don't think ours, if you're speaking about our specific case, if you're talking about, however, the NYPD and New York City and New York State as a whole, is this a case of self-inflicted wounds? Absolutely. Crime's a politically created crisis. The exodus in policing is a politically created crisis. The inability to recruit and retain is a politically created crisis. Everything that you're seeing is a result of our elected officials, is a result of the legislation they passed or the policies they put in place or the people they appointed. And they're all just recycling. You know, I watched the FDNY just backed Andrew Cuomo. Rep Espelot just backed Andrew Cuomo. He called for Andrew Cuomo to resign in 2020. Now he's saying that he should be the mayor. And it's just a recycling of the same failed politicians that have caused all this. That is a result of self-inflicted wounds. The problems occurring in New York and California and Chicago and in Seattle, those are all a case of self-inflicted wounds, 100%.
Yeah, spot on. John is spot on. And if you want to specifically look at Eric Adams, of course they're self-inflicted, because like we said before, Eric Adams has had all the tools in the world to become a very successful politician and to rise further up. This guy could have run for president. He has all the tools necessary. He came from a blue collar background. He was a cop. He then he rose through the ranks from state senator and now mayor. He had all the tools in the world, and yet, shot himself in the foot with all the nonsense that he was doing. All you had to do, it was so easy. All you had to do was not be corrupt, okay, and to do your job. That's all you had to do. And the path was already laid out in front of him. But instead, he shoots himself in the foot, and now here we are, and he's fighting for his political life. And we're talking about a guy who, as we've said before, is very slick. Bill Clinton slick in the way he can get out of maneuver his way through situations that would have ended the careers of lesser skilled politicians. So yes, this is all self-inflicted, and it all didn't have to happen like it has.
Yeah, no, it's wild, man. Mike Freed says, yet according to some, we are retired, we are zeros and do nothings and not experts. No one listens to us. Listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion, I always welcome the hate. Doesn't bother me. We have 9,000 people on here this morning. And I think when you put yourself in the public eye, you're gonna face a lot of criticism. And I there's the old saying, lions don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. I look at it a little differently. I hold on to the verse that the wicked flee though no one pursue, but the righteous stand bold as a lion. I believe in the things I'm saying. So if you don't, I'm willing to have the conversation with you. But we get people on here under fake names, threatening us, saying whatever they want, and they're fleeing. They're doing it for whatever reason they're doing. They're not willing to have the conversation. And even them, I'll be honest with you, they don't annoy me. Like I always say, love your haters. The more they hate, the more you grow. Don't worry about them. Don't focus on them. Do you. And that's not just in being in the public eye. That's throughout your entire life, your entire career. That's the lessons you need to teach your children when they're in school. That's your lessons you need to teach your children when they go into the sports arena, if they do so, or any other thing. Life is a series of competition. Don't concern yourself with the opinions of others. Concern yourself with your opinion of you. That is it, because your opinion of you is who you are. That is it. It doesn't matter what everyone thinks about you, or what they're going to say about you, or what they have to do. It doesn't matter. Your opinion of you is the only thing that matters. So, to shout out to all the haters on here. You guys keep the fuel. You keep me fired up. You keep the fuel in all of us. You keep us. You keep us heavily going. And all that criticism, I eat it up. I do. I eat it up. All the bad stuff. Do I say it doesn't get to me? No, I use it. I take it. Oh, they said this about me. They said, when I started the podcast in 22, I started, I think in like August of 22. Everyone's like, who the hell's going to listen to you? Who cares what you got to say? Who are you? And there were all these attacks. And I was like, I don't care who does, but I'm just doing it. I just feel like it's something I need to do. When I went out on social media and I started a social media account, everybody started, well, who are you to give an opinion? I'm me. I'm my father's son. That's it. I'm me. That's me. This is me. This is who I am. Where are you? If you have a counter opinion, give it, and the same's true for everything. I'd go on the news, I'd go on mainstream corporate news. Why are they calling you? Why aren't they calling me? I'm like, I don't know. And so don't concern yourself with these people. It's not, they're nobody. So it is what it is. If they want to do what you're doing, they could easily do it too. They just have to go out and do it. But they flee because they're wicked. Marlon, you got anything else before we start to wrap this up today?
No. Let me see. Logic's finest. If I may quickly, Eric Adams only talks like that when he's in the crowd that he knows is gonna eat it up. Okay, Eric Adams, when he's in front of investment bankers and elites, he changes up his whole language and he becomes more professional and he caters to his audience. Okay, so don't think that this is a guy who's not intelligent. Okay, you're underestimating him if you think he's not smart enough to change up his tone. Yeah. But I don't know if we're gonna get a chance to talk about the housing cop.
Yeah, you want to just run us through it real quick?
Yeah. So if I can just quickly, the over the weekend, another incident came up regarding the cop who pulled over a pedestrian, and he requested $1,700 for them. So another incident has come to light of somebody else who loaned this cop, I think about the same amount of money too, and the cop has yet to return it. So that person has called the NYPD and reported it to Internal Affairs. And he stated that basically the cop has some sort of financial trouble and seems to have had a pattern of this. And there are other rumors about it. I don't know. Maybe I'll let John if John wants to bring them up. But this is the rumors about him are even worse than the rumors are bad because this is something that again, this is another problem that could have been nipped in the bud when it first came up, and yet it didn't, and it's now a bigger issue than before, and it's a part of a repeating pattern.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people on here already alluding to it. They're saying civil matter is correct. IAB ? So I mean, rumors are that the kid was part of the khaki pants crew when these all started, and he got transferred as a result of that. And what the rumors are is that they were basically members of the service that he also asked to borrow money from and never repaid them. And I believe there were notifications made to IAB at that point, and IAB had just chalked it up to a civil matter. It has nothing to do with them. It's not corruption. It has nothing to do with it. But I don't know. So now another case is coming up that somebody else got pulled over and he borrowed money from them too. I don't know. It is. Everybody's saying it's a suspicious story. It's a weird story. It is, man. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's not. These are all the rumors that we're hearing. But if it turns out, in fact, that the rumor's true, that he was borrowing money from his coworkers and IAB basically was aware of it and did absolutely nothing about it until it now is he's abusing his authority on the street. Because don't get it chalked up. If you're pulling people over and you're asking for a loan, that is a complete abuse of authority. That is a complete misuse of authority. The same way we say about people of authority in positions using their position to act as if they're playboys or think they're good looking and women actually like them. it's the same thing when it comes to any type of business transaction or anything like that. If you're using your position as an elected official or as a member of the NYPD or as a fireman to solicit some type of money or sex, it is an absolute abuse of authority. It's a misuse of the uniform, and it's conduct unbecoming of the officer. So while it may not be criminal, it may be a civil matter. Should be a civil matter while you're no longer in the office that you were in while you solicited that, because it definitely is. It definitely is a misuse of the uniform. It's a disgrace to the uniform, and if it occurred, like I said, it should never be allowed to occur ever again. So
Yeah, yeah. It's completely inappropriate, and we've talked about in the past about the danger. If this guy was part of a CRT, we've talked about the danger of quickly promoting young cops to positions that they aren't really ready for, And the thing is, like, when you promote guys so young so quickly, I think a lot of times it gets to their heads, and I think in a lot of ways I mean, he may have been corrupt before, he may have had unscrupulous morals before, but when you promote guys so quickly, I think it gets to their heads. And especially in this case, if he's part of CRT, that means, who knows, he might have gotten his shield like tomorrow, So do we really want guys like that to have even more access to being able to commit misconduct and corruption? It's guys, I'm a big fan of progression, and like I said, guys you should do your time like everybody else. You should work through the precinct, work your way up to special teams, and be on the grind, and do your time. And the benefit of that also for the department is that it catches corruption before you get to a position where you could do even you could elevate your corruption to a higher level by having access to maybe the entire city, or cases, or like issues that you wouldn't have had you been going through the process.
yeah. What was the other thing? Other rumor was that the CO Candidate Assessment Division was just recently removed from his position because he showed favoritism to allow someone with a previous illegal firearm charge to become a New York City police officer. I don't know how true it is. We've gotten it a bunch of times in both form, like one that some kid that has a gun charge is now a cop, and then the other one that the CO Candidate Assessment was removed. And then we've gotten them both together. So we've gotten a bunch of rumors with that. So if any of you guys got anything with that, let us know. I don't know what else really to say about it, but I do know that there was a huge push to fill this last class, to make sure that they have the education requirements. I believe they were being offered fast free credits, and a lot of criminality and a lot of issues that we talked about in the past. People that would traditionally not pass the psychological or passing the psychological, people that would not traditionally pass the physical or passing the physical, people that would not traditionally pass the criminal background check or passing the criminal background check. So, I mean, if this is what we're going to do, you could expect a whole lot more of these unusual stories to come out.
Yeah. Yep. And as we lose veterans, you're going to expect them more too, because we're going to be promoting more rookies to positions where an access that they really shouldn't have at that time on the job. So, yeah.
Pat Donahue, before we get out of here, I think this is an important one. I have it on good authority that one union is eager to publicly announce an endorsement for Adams. Said union president may even host a fundraiser and invite his union members to attend and donate. Oh yeah, definitely nothing to see there, right? No conflict of interest there at all. Wonder who it could be. Maybe someone that had already had a fundraiser for Adams in the past. I don't know. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see think if the police unions move that way, that is, again, it's a slap in the face. We'll totally be in opposition to that, and I think the other thing, well, on Friday we got some good CAS videos. I totally see electioneering in it. We'll play them at a later date. We're over 2 hours already. I don't want to go too much longer. But when you look at these videos, it's complete electioneering. It's talking about it's during an election season, and all it's talking about is the Adams administration and what they're doing for public safety. And it's basically he's using Shell and Kaz for free campaign ads. That's what he's doing. It's basically what it is.
Yeah. I think if the unions move that way, that kind of lends support to our theory that what happened with the pension and the return of 20 and all of that is tied to election season. So something to think about.
Yeah. So anything else before we get out of here, Marlon?
No, that's it for me. Have a good day, guys. Those of you doing patrol today, stay safe. Don't let the warm weather fool you into, dropping your guard and not paying attention to what's going on around you. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Last thing I forgot. Last night, Port Richmond section around 7:30 p.m. at night. Oh, and by the way, I'm in Staten Island. I've been hearing gunshots like crazy. That's one. Two, some fireworks too, but like I've heard legit gunshots. But last night, 7:30 at night, Port Richmond section, anti-crime guys doing anti-crime. I believe they were out of the 121. Attempting to apprehend a perp. They're in their car. Perp opens fire on them. Glass shards hit them. They're received minor injuries, thankfully. According to the reports, nobody was outstanding, meaning they actually apprehended the perp. That's all I got so far, but no press conference, no news reports about it, no nothing. So, I mean, is that what we should expect this election season? That cops are going to get shot at, and nobody's going to know the details of it, and it's just going to come out from independent sources. Before we get out of here, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I think that's something we got to keep an eye out on. I also think that all the movement we're seeing for All Out this year, and all the like the draconian measures to make sure people show up for All Out is all part of that. So it's all part of that whole managing perception for the summertime, the traditional summertime violence that comes on. And I think the fact that the election is right around the corner, and remember, Eric Adams' entire platform is that he's a centrist, a politician who is security minded. Okay, he's a former police captain, so he you can expect a safe city with him. Well, what happens when the city isn't safe? Then that's a huge part of his platform already down. So I unfortunately expect more of this, and it's something that we got to keep an eye out. Especially as, by the way, I might add that they've made they're limiting the your ability to hear what's going on the radio with the new secured radios. So it's all part of measures to keep you in the dark about the crime rate and what's happening.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, Eric's going to take some time to grieve, take care of his family. We'll let you know when he's going to be back. I know Marlon's always part of the Finance Unfiltered. He comes on here, whether once or twice a week, so I'm probably a little bit more often now. I'm going to be stepping up the political interviews when I get back to Florida. Got a lot of candidates coming on, so those will be in between the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, the original shows. So we might get some at night, do some at night, but we got some mayoral candidates, New York City mayoral candidates for Brooklyn Borough President, candidates for Public Advocate, candidates for Manhattan DA, and all the other races. So we're going to bang out a lot in between now and June. I appreciate it. We got 9,100 people with us on this morning. The chat was very lively. I appreciate all you guys, being on. And tomorrow we're going to have the Sal Greco show at 13:30 or 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. He'll be on, and we'll follow that up with. We'll be back on Wednesday, more than likely a candidate interview, a political candidate interview, followed by the executive perspective at 17:05 or 5:05 p.m. Looking forward to that. And just listen, we appreciate all you guys, and anybody that's not following us, if you're on Instagram, if you're on any of these channels where we don't see you in the chat, go over to our YouTube, do us a favor, like and subscribe. If you're on X, if you give us a follow and a reshare, we appreciate you. Break the shadow banning out, and let's keep it going. So find us on Unfiltered, people. We will be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime. But nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.